Christy had to leave. Oh, recording is in progress. So thank you for coming to the Massachusetts Library Association Readers Advisory Section discussion of genre blends on today, St. Patrick's Day, March the 17th in our year of Audrey Lord 2022. 2022. Tara, you start, Anna.
Okay, so I feel like the term genre blends got trendy 10 or 15 years ago. People have been blending, authors have been blending genres for a long time. It's like Wilkie Collins is going to have some mystery and some horror / supernatural, right? But the Readers Advisory Community became obsessed with the idea of genre blends as a thing, to the extent of like publishing a guide to genre blends through ALA editions and stuff like that. I'm not sure how much it's currently used. Maybe you have a sense of that, Aline, but if you go to the genre blender, which is something that Megan McCardle, who wrote the Reader's Advisory Guide to Genre Blends, put together, it hasn't been updated in the last almost 10 years, it looks like. And so if you go to blender.genrefi.com, put it in the chat, try
I'll
it.
put it in the notes.
You can pick a couple of genres and just like blend them together and see what books, like if I do mystery and romance together, I get some Jane Castle books and Nalini Singh, and it shows the tags that are associated with that. And so the general idea of a genre blend is that it's a pretty, I think, mostly even blend of genres, so that it's not going to just be a mystery with a tiny bit of romance, but the mystery and the romance are going to have both equal weight or strong weight in the narrative. Aline.
Yes,
Check
thank
me
you
on this.
You are absolutely right. I was just going to look something up. So the term genre blends is one that you may hear applied by your readers, but it's a little bit jargony. And so, but I think that it's a really important thing to know about for your readers, because I have talked about Nancy Pearl's 4 doorways into books, and you will find that there are genre crossovers and genre blends that fit your readers' tastes based on some general tropes. Like when Anna was a young reader, she really, really loved Lois McMaster Bugeaud because it was a fantasy series, but there were interpersonal relationships and sexy times in them. And that what? No,
science fiction.
sorry,
Each of them
whatever.
has a mystery. And they're
so
romance.
it's important to get things wrong, and then your readers will correct you, and they'll make that face that Anna just made, which is really important because that's really helpful. So I love mysteries and romance, and so I really, really love the historical mysteries with spies in them, or say the Secret History of the Pink Carnation series by Lauren Willig, which has contemporary times and historical times and research. I'm a librarian, and there's spy action, and there's like figuring out the spy action later, and there's like so much going on. And you will find that some of your favorite books, or some of your readers' favorite books, may themselves be genre blends. And I'm always, yes, Anna.
I was gonna say the classic example being Outlander.
I was just going to say Outlander, and so I'm glad that I gave you an opportunity to participate, because Outlander it's historical because it's in historical Scotland. It's historical because it's in World War II. It's a romance. It's got sexy times. It's got extraordinarily good history. It's got, like, you can go to those places. I've been to some of them, and there's like so much going on. I always like to tell, especially groups of lady librarian readers advisor, that my dad, the retired Navy SEAL, devoured the Outlander books. I took the first 4 to my parents when they were living abroad and didn't have a lot of access to every book in the world. And as soon as my mom finished reading them, my dad read them and was like, where's the next one? And I think that's significant. My dad was definitely an epic reader. He was all over James Clavell and those 1,000-page books, which Outlander definitely fulfills. But I would not have expected him to have fallen for those that way. Go ahead, Anna.
I have a more recent genre blending book
Good.
that most people who like science fiction and fantasy will be familiar with, called Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is a mystery, horror, science fiction, humor book.
Yes, it is very much so. And I should start using that as an example, because Outlander seriously dates me, because it's 30 years ago at this point. But it's good. It's also a touchstone that many folks have heard of, and you can say, oh yeah, because somebody, like, in an earlier incarnation of my readers advisory talking, I suggested that someone read Outlander, and they came back because it was a readers advisory series where we assigned the book, and then we came back a month later to talk about it and the genre. And so this reader read Outlander, and she came back and she's like, my kids are starving, my dog is dead in the backyard, my husband has left me, and I don't care because I've been reading Outlander. And it was funny that it had sucked her in so much, because she wasn't that interested in it when it had been described to her. And it's one of the things that it really has going for it is that it's a page turner. Regardless of all of the other stuff, it's a page turner. So I think that's a lot of fun. Never remember that. Okay, I'm trying to get into Novelist and see what they say about genre blends too. Anna.
I was just going to say, I think that one of the things we would like to try to do is generate more current sure bets or benchmarks that we could use. For example, I think the Golem and the Ginny is a good genre blend of historical fiction and fantasy that a lot of people that don't usually read things with fantastical elements ended up reading, right? So if we can among ourselves generate a list of things that we could give people to sort of I think something that genre blend can do is sort of make people who don't usually read that realize that maybe they would be interested in reading that. I think The Martian is a science fiction book, but it's also kind of like a thriller. It just happens to be set in space, and it's really about his problem solving more than it is about space.
Referring back to outdated things, which Anna will pull me forward from again. I was never really a thriller reader, and I was never really a science fiction reader, but back in the 90s, I was a huge Michael Crichton fan, because he had this fantastical, futuristic, sciencey thing going on. His science was, you could follow his science as a kid who was smart in high school. And you see that with The Martian. I felt like The Martian did for me what Michael Crichton did for me in college. The Martian did for me 25 years later, which I thought was really cool. And I still don't consider myself a science fiction reader, but those are science fiction. They are like talking about science. Things are happening. So romances.
Did you find what you were looking for on Novelist?
Not yet. I went back to take notes, make sure that I didn't miss
well,
everything.
this will be recorded, so if you miss something.
That's right. This is being recorded.
Now, another really genre blendy romance is Soulless by Gail Carriger, which is now more than 10 years old, but Gail is still producing a sort of steampunk, supernatural, historical romances, which are often more interested in the details of the setting and the connections between people than they are about romance. So I think that as a genre blend, that makes sense. That Aline doesn't like the rest of the series because they're not romancy enough for her, but that makes it a good genre blend, I think, because there are further couples that get together in the rest of the series. It's just not it's not about their relationships necessarily.
Could you repeat what that was?
The book is called Soulless by Gail Carriger, and it's set in Victorian England, but then it goes elsewhere.
It's steampunky though, and there's werewolves.
And vampires, yeah.
And vampires and other fey creatures. The central character herself is soulless, and so I don't remember why she doesn't have a soul, but she is not subject to the whims of the vampires and werewolves and their compulsions of others as people with souls might be. It's cool. There's like cool concepts and stuff. I'm glad you mentioned my reluctance to continue reading a series. You will find series where there is a romance in the first volume, and then the partners have teamed up and they solve mysteries going forward. And a classic one is the J.D. Robb in Death books, and it's ongoing, and their relationship is ongoing, and there's sexy times in the books, but you're not wondering if Eve and Rourke are going to stay together. And Deanna Raybourne's Lady Julia Gray books, is that them, where the first one is a mystery and they have to figure out who killed her husband, and then she hooks up with the guy who helped her figure out who killed her husband, and then there's like a great series, and Deanna Raybourne is a brilliant writer, and the setting is Victorian, and it's very compelling. And I'm like, well, I just want the romance, because I don't know, but these are things that you can talk with your readers about, because there are some folks who are like, I'm here for the long haul and I want to see how they grow together, and I'm like, I am only here for the rush of crushes.
Good to know, Aline. A sort of genre blending series that does it the other way around is the Hidden Legacy series by Elona Andrews, which is the sixth one is about to come out in August, I believe, but it's contemporary urban fantasy with a strong romantic undercurrent, but they don't actually get together in the first book. Like maybe they have one kiss in the first book. And so like, if you are a romance reader and you're reading it as a romance, you would be like, wait a minute, where is the sex? Where is anything? It's a compelling and interesting plot though. So if you had someone that was like, I want my urban fantasy, but I don't like it when it's paranormal romance, right? I want to tone down the romance part, then Elona Andrews would be a good choice. I've read some of her I would say their Kate Daniels series, and it has the same kind of like delayed gratification vibe, which is not for Aline. Aline wants instant, this volume only, or I'm not doing it. Forget it. I don't have that much time. So I guess the question I want to ask is like, how do we know Aline, if a genre blend is right for that person? What are the warning signs?
Well, so this is a good thing for your it's a good thing for your reader's advisory interview, which you may be comfortable with, or you may be like, I'm not sure I'm really great with that. My best experiences have been with patrons who I've gotten to know over repeat visits. And so, and this is something I am a proactive reader's advisor, extrovert person. Like if I catch you in the stacks looking at a book, I'm going to come over to you and talk to you about it, and then try to give you more like it if that's what our conversations comes to be. I have a couple of patrons who hide from me because I have done this to them more than once. And you know, I have like an ongoing library reads display that I have a few patrons who don't want to talk to me go there routinely. But so I had someone who had read, I don't know what she was reading and enjoying, but I nudged her over toward Robert B. Parker and Robert Crace and Michael Connolly, which are three white male mystery writers who I have like really enjoyed in my life. And she went through all of them. She like had her list and she had them in order and she read them all. And then she started telling me about some of the things that she was liking in these books. And I was like, oh, really? And then I gave her The Secret History of the Pink Carnation by Lauren Willig, which has like mysterious stuff and strong characters, but it's got a historical setting and it's like basically a romance. And, you know, she came back and she's like, oh my God, can I have more of those? And we've like gone through a few different things over time. She's an avid reader and she doesn't come to me every time she comes in the library. She like goes and, you know, is working her way through her series, but she does come back. And now she will read anything that I give her because she like, I mean, yes, there's like a building of trust thing, but she knows that I'm like getting at the thing that she wants rather than just sort of like throwing things at her that are the same as what she's been reading, because nothing's the same. Reading is a very intimate experience, and so on and so forth. So I don't recommend that you like necessarily be sneaky with your patrons, but we often have patrons who come back and want to talk about books that they've enjoyed and want to find more like them. And I believe very much in the occasional wild card. And sometimes it's like, okay, here's the next Michael Connolly, and here's the next Robert B. Parker, and here's the next Lauren Willig, and I think you ought to try this. And I feel like I've given her, she's like reading mystery series, but I'm not able to remember the other one that I gave her. I don't think I gave her Louise Penny and Donna Leon yet, but like those are possibilities.
Or if they were a different kind of person, you might steer them into like Western mysteries or something, or if they were interested in fantasy at all, you know, like a Jim Butcher,
Yep.
or something like that. I think Pam alluded to it earlier that publishers don't like genre blending because it makes it harder for them to market the book. Like those of us who are me, when we saw the description of Gideon in the Ninth, we were like, yes, I want that. But it's very hard to describe what Gideon the Ninth is about or what makes it delightful to read, because it's not like anything else. It's hard to give read-alikes for, because it's like a weird animal. And so I think, you know, publishers want to keep it into their little silos of like, this is women's fiction.
Yeah, I think each genre, I mean, the point of a genre is that it has rules that people understand, and they know that they want to go back and read more things that are going to adhere to those rules. You know, like with a romance, you know what you're going to get along the steps, even knowing that you still want more of that. And so the genre blends makes it difficult because you don't know which pieces of those genres are going to be the parts that are mashed up.
Yeah.
And publishers like to have very clear things that they're doing.
One of the authors that's doing a lot of interesting things with genres and succeeding every time, as far as I can tell, is Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And so if you're interested, if someone is like, I need a new author to read and I like variety, you can be like, okay, well, here, this author every time is trying something different. And every time it's like, ooh, that was cool. We read, no, I can't remember the name of it. The one that's set in 1920s Mexico.
Gods of Jade and Shadow.
Thank you. Which was a very interesting, like, fantasy, historical, a little bit of mystery thrown in. Blend.
With like folklore-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say Sarah Gailey is doing, they are also doing something different every time.
Yep.
Where I read Upright Women Wanted, which is a post-apocalyptic queer lady librarians and an underground circulation of printed material story. And I also read Magic for Liars, which is a Muggle sister and her magical sister teaches at a non-Hogwarts, but she gets called in to solve the murder of one of the other magic teachers. So it's got this like gumshoe thing and this Hogwarts thing, and I've only read those two and they're brilliant. And Sarah keeps working in different ways. They have a new book coming out soon. Did you just raise your hand, Audrey? Or are you waving at
I
someone?
did.
Oh, good. Talk.
I suggest that you go after River of Teeth next, which is alternate history mixed with.
Thank you.
It's just fabulous. In the event that we had actually imported hippos to use for meat and then abandoned that idea and then let the hippos run feral all over Louisiana. So it's alternate history with like some Western stuff and a little bit of mystery. Sarah Gailey is just all over the place and she's doing well everywhere.
Tell me the teeth title again.
River of Teeth. And there
Thank
is
you.
a sequel, but I don't remember what it is. I think Tor has reissued it as a
combo,
twofer. Yeah.
And I read The Echo Wife, which was a very interesting, like, science fiction thriller with clones.
Which I felt like I read because I listened to part of it with you and you told me everything that happened.
Yes, that's how we read things together.
I feel like we have talked a bit about what genre blends are. We've given some examples of genre blends. We've made some suggestions to each other based on that. And we've talked a little bit about the conversation with patrons on if you run into someone who asks for genre blends. One of the things that on the topic of talking to patrons, when someone comes in and they're like, I loved Gideon the Ninth, I want more like that, or I love Outlander, I want more like that. A genre blend is usually one that it's like, well, there's nothing quite like that because they're doing a great job. And understanding that can help you as a reader's advisor talk to the patron about what they liked about the book, because there are time travel books where people go to Scotland. There are historical Scottish kilt lifter romances. There are, there is a lot, there's tons of historical fiction written about the courts of the various royal families all the way back to when they started writing things down. So you can give your patrons a lot of great reads that aren't going to have every aspect of the genre blend. If they come in and they're like, I want Gideon the Ninth, well, then you can give them Harrow the Ninth because there's a sequel, but you also need to draw out some of the details of what they loved so much, because maybe they're really into the whole concept of necromancy, or maybe they're just panting for queer central characters. And there are a lot of things you can contribute to that conversation without being able to find a perfect match, which is one of the challenges of Readers Advisory as a perfectionist, which you may or may not be, but I am. And somebody says, I want a book just like this, and I'm gonna like my anxiety is going to come up because there isn't a book just like that. And so I have to like get over that and start talking to them about what they like to read. And I hope that not everyone has those feelings when you're talking with patrons about books, but it can also be helpful to consider the processes that you go through when someone says, I'm looking for something good to read. Anything else to
So,
add?
well, I was just gonna say, I think we should open up to the group and see if anyone else has sort of genre blending recommendations that they successfully handed off. The one that I was just occurred to me was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. I would give it to someone that says, I want a quick read that makes me think, and it's sort of a time travel science fiction epistolary book, and it just sort of thought provoking and strangely sweet.
And I haven't read it yet, and I am desperate to read it because I love those two writers and I follow them on Twitter, and it sounds right up my alley. I'm really glad you mentioned it because that is another thing that you can almost attribute to a genre blend, is that anything can be epistolary, and you can find in the biography section, you can find exchanges of letters between great writers of history, and the sense of reading someone else's mail is really fun for those of us who like epistolary novels and stories. And it doesn't really matter what they're talking about because you're just a part of an intimate conversation. Like if you're listening to a podcast that is recorded by two people who are good friends or something like that. We are finding all kinds of cross format and cross genre and different like aspects of things that are what we want as a reader or as a listener or as a watcher. And I think that How We Lost the Time War is a really good example of something that appeals across a whole lot of different things that your readers might like. We did not talk about what do you like to watch and listen to for conversations about genre blends for your patrons. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little, Anna or Pam.
Just that basically in any reader's advisory interaction, especially if you're stumped, it can be good to be like, what shows are you watching right now, or what is your favorite series? I had a person come in the other day for something else, but then they said, I need a new mystery series, and I started out by sort of saying like, she said she read all of Agatha Christie, but then threw out a couple of other names indicating that it's not just cozy for them, it could be anything. And I was like, well, how much gore are you interested in? She was like, I don't really know. And so then we talked about what she was watching, and she said that she had watched X and Y, and suddenly I was like, have you watched Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries? And she was like, oh yeah, we like that show. And I was like, well, have you read any of the books? And she said no. So I was like, great, perfect, here you go, here's the first one. There are 20 more. You'll be very happy. Come back and tell me what you think. But like, I was stuck until we started talking about, stuff that she'd been watching. So
Also a great question when someone says either just like, oh, I just want a good book, and you try to tease it out and they're like, no, I don't, well, whatever good book you have. Or especially with teens who are just very reticent, like they don't even really want a book, but they have to get a book. So those questions are particularly helpful in those two situations.
You can get a lot out of people. When someone says like they love Bones or they love Criminal Minds or they love Law and Order, that gives you a lot to go on. And it gives you a lot to go. If they say they like, I don't know, if they say they like Law and Order, but then they also say that they like that one with Angie Harmon. Courier and Ives.
Yeah, not Courier and Ives.
What's it
Rizzoli
called?
and Isles.
Solely
Thank
Isles.
you. Thank you. Courier and Ives. Rizzoli and Isles. But like you're gonna get a vibe off of them where, you know, like I like Castle, but I like Castle because of his poker game with the other famous writers. I don't really like the dynamic between Castle and the main character, Lady Cop. I like his family, like the woman who plays his mom and the woman who plays his daughter. So I've watched, you know, 5 seasons of Castle, but it wasn't really about the things that Castle is doing. And I am super interested I enjoy ensemble things that have like a family ensemble. So I am super into the one, so the Criminal Minds family and the NCIS family, where they have like the quirky person behind the scenes, and then they have the like super butch person and the super tortured leader and all of that stuff. You know, I love that stuff, but you can find ensembles in any genre, and they don't always have to be episodic crime. Although I really like episodic crime
They do
too.
for you. Otherwise, I would say you should read the Becky Chambers book.
Tom just told me I should read that.
Yeah, you should.
Okay. So Tom is my patron who reads the same stuff as Anna. And so whenever Anna really likes something and Tom comes in, I'm like, Anna said you would like this. And this is like, this patron is like not part of our friend group, but you know, because of what he reads and what Anna reads and how we talk about books, how I talk about books with patrons who like let me. We would probably have to invite him to a barbecue if we ever had one again.
The book is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, in case I just couldn't come up with the name because it's a kind of long name, but it is a book about just a group of people on a long space voyage who get to know each other and become sort of like a found family unit. It's pretty low stakes.
Do y'all have any questions or anything you would like us to talk a little bit more about? I know that we talk a lot about the things that we talk about, and we are happy to wrap up if you're done. But I also want to make sure we've addressed any specific questions you might have.
Or if you have recommendations for good genre blend books.
Y'all are so kind.
I have a very quick question about the Becky Chambers book.
Huh.
So one of the things that I really liked about Gideon the Ninth is the snarky banter. So is the Becky Chambers book sort of like a Firefly read-alike-ish?
It's I think it's okay for a Firefly read-alike, but I don't remember it being as snarky.
Okay.
If you wanted snarky, I would go with Murderbot rather than the Becky Chambers.
It was sold to me as Firefly, and I went in and I was not happy with that. So it didn't work as well for Firefly, I really like. But yeah, Murderbot would be excellent.
Thanks.
And I need to read the new series that Becky Chambers started of novellas, the Monk and Robot series, A Psalm for the Wild Built. I think has the same kind of like cozy meditative quality that might be soothing for some readers right now.
Oh yeah, genre blends can be helpful for those of us who have found our reading has departed where it has always lived for us. And you're like, I can't handle the stress of a mystery, but I like there to be something figured out over the course of a book. And there are your stakes, like I can't handle anything with any stakes at all. And I mean, I couldn't before, and now I'm even more nervous about anything that is like hanging or uncertain. And so you may have readers who are coming in and they're sort of like, I've been in a slump, or I can't find anything good to read, or I haven't read anything in the last 2 years because, you know, all I've been reading is, I've just been scrolling through Twitter, or I've been reading articles about, you know, what the CDC says and what the people don't believe that the CDC is saying, and so on. And so that was another display idea that we had a lot of success with. We put collections of essays and short stories on display, and we were like, shorter reads for your tired brain. And it was super popular. And you know, it was another thing that I like didn't really expect to move that much, mostly because I don't like short stories, but I love essays. And so, and oh yes, all the Tor novellas. So having, you know, thinking about things like we all have changes in our reading tastes as we move through our lives. And then when there is a shared trauma like the pandemic has been for the entire world, that is something many of us have our own specific traumas from here or there in our lives that inform our reading preferences. And we also have a shared trauma with the world right now that might have some of us relating more closely to our readers than we did, because I have been such an enthusiastic romance reader my whole life. When someone comes in and they're like, I really love Jodi Picoult and I just need more like her. And I'm like, okay, well, here's this person. And they're like, have you read her? And I'm like, oh dear God, no, I do not read this stuff. You know, that we're relating. And I don't say this stuff when I'm talking to a patron. I'm just like, oh dear God, no, I can only read romances because I don't have much concentration. I mean, I make it a self-deprecating thing more than an outward facing thing, because readers are very sensitive to their reading, to judgment of their reading tastes. And so we want to avoid that. But I read more things that more people read now, because many of us are experiencing shifts and changes in our capacity and our tastes. That's another question for another time probably, but it's like I cannot tolerate true crime or like watching Dateline or something, but I have watched Criminal Minds all the way through and started it over again, and I have like seen 20 seasons of NCIS and Law and Order. I mean, I love crime, but if you tell me that it's really happening or someone is really perpetrating it, then I can't tolerate it somehow. Yeah, it's compartmentalization at its best. Any other bits? Thank you for bringing up specifics, Audrey. We appreciate an opportunity to answer.
So I recently read Jeff Vandermeer's Annihilation, because I had one person put it on a horror list and one person put it on a science fiction list. So I was like, well, which one is it? So I'm reading it and I'm like, I really don't know where I would put this. And I was trying to think of who I would recommend it to. And I was thinking, oh, if somebody loved Lost, because I still don't know what's happened in this book. I read the entire trilogy. I have no idea what happened. But I mean, I love the characters. I thought the writing style was really great. It's a really hard book to place.
Just so you know, he places it in something called New Weird.
New Weird. Okay, that
which
makes sense.
explains that
It does
doesn't
explain
really have a
everything.
spot.
And New Weird is a place that you might find Cory Doctorow and China Mieville.
It is actually a perfect genre blend spot, because it is really like taking bits from other places and putting them together.
Yeah, that's
Really,
great.
I would put Cory Doctorow and China Mieville, and just they're much easier for me to place in science fiction.
Yeah.
What puts them in New Weird?
That is a really good question that my short answer is I don't know, and I could probably talk about it for 10 minutes and then we'd all go to sleep. Pam, help me.
I'd say Cory Doctorow is of those three authors the most firmly in sorry, a truck is going by, most firmly in sci-fi, although some of his stuff kind of does veer into the New Weird. China Mieville is very like literary in ways that you don't expect from sci-fi or from fantasy. Some of his stuff is more fantasy. And so I think that kind of drifting in and out kind of puts him in the New Weird. And then Jeff Vandermeer coined the term new weird after Lovecraft's weird. Like Lovecraft didn't use Lovecraft, he used weird. And so like
I'm totally starting a new genre called Moroni.
I think it's good. And that'll just be the new weird. So it's like all these genre blends, it's like these fuzzy lines where it's not easy for a publisher to say, well, this is definitely horror, this is definitely sci-fi, this is definitely fantasy. And that's why like the reference interview is so important, because like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. We'll figure it out together, basically.
And I also wanted to say I loved Sylvia Moreno Garcia because I read Gods of Jade Shadow and then I read Mexican Gothic, and I would never have thought that the same author wrote both of those, but I love them both.
Oh, and now she's doing The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which looks fabulous.
Very
And then she
good.
did just historical fiction, the last one, which I frankly didn't touch because nothing supernatural happened.
The Sylvia Moreno Garcia makes me think of Carmen Maria Machado's short stories. What was the first book? Her Body and Other
Parties.
Parties, Her Body and Other Parties, which it's the one that stands out for me is that she does an adult with a capital A retelling of the old ghost story with the green ribbon around the wife's neck, where you can't remove the green ribbon, and when her husband cuts the green ribbon, her head falls off and rolls away. So one of the stories retells that, except there's some sort of kinky sex thing too, but they're like really compelling and interesting and weird, and they are written by a queer Latin woman, which is interesting too. So I have not read her memoir, which I understand is
Intense.
Thank you, that's the word. And so I would distinguish between the short stories and the memoir if you were someone who were sensitive to relationship troubles. But well, thank you so much for coming. I like ending well before we thought we would end, because we usually think we're going to end at about 11:30, but now everybody can go have a cup of tea before they have to go out on the desk or head into the library, or